Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Thrive Yoga Fit Transformational Coaching. This is Erin, and today I have a very special guest. He is one of my most favorite recent gurus, and he is also one of the hosts of the Wisdom of Sages podcast. He is the lead singer of Youth of Today, former Youth of Today, and Shelter. And he's also leading retreats all over the world, one of which I attended. And yeah, I'm super happy to have him. Raghunath Ray Cappo. Hello, welcome.
Hey, great to see you since India. I,
I
I
know,
literally
right?
just got back a few days ago.
Did you? Yeah, how was your travels?
My travels were really, really nice. We went to Rishikesh and I was around your whole group and then I had another group right after that in Mayapur. And then I just needed a break from humans. So me and my partner went to Goa for 9 days and I started working on a new book down there. It was just good just to be away from everybody. Then I dove back into people again and went up to Vrindavan and Rishikesh. And that was a big Kirtan festival going on there. And then we just chilled out for the last few days in Jaipur, and that was really nice.
Oh, that's awesome. You're a man of contrast, similar to me. It's kind of like hopping from one thing, and then it's like I need total silence. I need to sit in silence
Yeah.
and talk to me, and then like let me chant some mantra. Like let's get back into it. So.
Well, I think we're similar in a lot of ways. We're both pretty extroverted, but the extrovert still needs to time to just, pull back a little and recalibrate. So I see a lot of both of us have pretty similar qualities, I think. I've seen you up on stage screaming your head off, leading a yoga class, and then chilling out in a yin class yourself.
Yeah, it's I think it's sort of like the rasa of life, the flavor, and I like to have a variety, it's like if you get some chapati and some dal, you want to like some different types of chutney all around on the dish, right? You want
Right,
some tamarind, you want some mint, you want something hot just to kind of spice it up. And so
right.
then have a palate cleanser maybe at the end there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and you can't fake what you are, you know what I mean? And I've always felt like even though I was like a monk for a certain time and coming from the punk scene, you can't automatically just pretend you didn't have that. I didn't have that background in the New York hardcore punk scene. That was just sort of like part of the fabric of what I am. And I feel like in Vedic thought and Vedic teachings that you have to like just not sort of change costumes, so to speak, but
Mm,
take what you naturally are authentically, the karmas that you were born with in this lifetime, and just use it in a way that's going to sort of purify the consciousness instead of degrading the consciousness.
mm.
And you and I are going to be what we are. We can just sort of refine ourselves, but we're not going to become different people. They say you can't make a curly tail of a dog straight just by holding it straight. It's going to snap back to being curly.
Sure. So go with the curl. Yeah, I'm grateful that yoga ethics came into my life because we both like are in like punk hardcore scene, which we still are, and we very much integrated it into our lives. And it's interesting that I have like quite a few like snapshot moments of when I was on this recent retreat with you in the am I going to say it right? The Godarvan village. Did I say it right?
Govardhan, yeah.
Govardhan Village. There was one like snapshot where we were singing Kirtan and then you got up and there was like a mosh pit that started and you were just kind of backing up and getting into everybody and everyone's like dancing, singing, the cartels are going and it was like that same energy that I have always like craved at a punk show, but it was like incorporated in a spiritual way and everyone was just like standing up and they're just like getting to it. There was less like black eyes and like punching
Right.
fun.
There was no bottles being thrown. I remember the first time I mean, when I first went to punk shows, I was like, I've never seen anything like this. This is sort of like it resonated so deeply. It sort of like was a sort of a lawless type of almost like it wasn't violent. It was like an organized sport almost.
Mm.
Um, but it had so much energy. I thought it's so much better than just like sitting and watching a concert and holding up your lighter at a Coliseum
Kumbaya.
show. But the only time I ever saw that replicated in another genre was the first time I went to a kirtan at the temple in Brooklyn, where I just saw an incredible, like, um, every different ethnicity you could think of, blacks and Puerto Ricans and whites and Jews and, just everybody together and a whole palette just singing and dancing and jumping with like five of these giant maranga drums and big giant cartels and small cartels and like singing and also just blissful. And I was like, this is the closest thing to hardcore music I've ever seen. And so, yeah, it does because it's almost like a full body experience, full mental experience. You're fully immersed in it, but it's done with no, but the kirtan is, you're trained to do it without any sort of performance. It's not a, which sort of hardcore was like that, but it was sort of unspoken words. You were just sort of moved by the music and the message. But the kirtan is, you're sort of trained to do this. This is not a performance. This is like prayer, and it's just sort of
Mm.
like a spontaneous movement of the body as well. So I somehow can draw those parallels in the same way you saw it happen in
Yeah.
India with me.
It
Um,
was super rad. I mean, there were so many moments where like, so for example, just like to tell my audience where like how I found you. So I found you on the Joe Rogan podcast, which was funny because when I went to India and like I was at the retreat, I was talking to everybody and I figured that that's how they found you just because of my mindset. And they're like,
sure.
no, like they found you through your podcast, Wisdom of the Sages, which I had listened to a couple of episodes. I kind of been following you in different ways, but it's interesting because there's different aspects of you that I connected with maybe before some of the other people that were at the retreat. So I was like, yeah,
Right.
the punk rock guy. Like that's how you know him, right? They're like, not really, like, but they
Some
know
people don't even know that. Yeah, some
that.
people have
It's
no
so funny to
clue of
me.
that part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just like really interesting to like I resonated with that. I resonated with, of course, you're a martial artist. And so I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, and he's like kind of obsessed with India the way I am, and he's a yogi. I was like, well, he's my teacher. And
What a good match.
I know, it just kind of like matched up. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go halfway around the world to meet this dude and take a training. And besides that, you have an amazing posse of people that support you, love you, and believe in your mission. And
Mm.
they're real, authentic people themselves, like
Sweet people, huh?
they really are. Like,
Really down to earth, grounded people. You can make some best friends there.
yeah, I love like all the teachers that you had there, like
Mm.
100% will be coming back again. Like,
Yeah.
so do you go to India every year, like kind of in that time frame, like kind of plan it out that way?
I go twice a year. One in that time, which is all the trainings. Like you did the 300 hour or you did the
Kirtan,
300, you did the
kirtan.
kirtan. Okay. So
I
we
was
did the
very much
200
like in the
hour.
yoga part of
Yeah.
it though,
I'm
like
sorry.
so.
So yeah, there's a 200 hour, 300 hour. Then there's the kirtan trainings that go on, and that happens during the pretty much the beginning of or the month of January. And then we have that flower festival, and then I take a whole nother group on a pilgrimage to Mayapur. It's sort of a level 2 pilgrimage for people who are already into their bhakti path.
Heard.
But I do an introduction pilgrimage, which is really fun in the autumn time.
Oh,
And this year it's happening November or October 29th. And we go to all like the classic yogi spots. We're going to, Rishikesh, Haridwar, Dev Prayag. Those are all cities on the River Ganga. And then we fly to Jaipur, which is a sacred, it's an old kingdom of devotee kings, and then we end in and we drive to Vrindavan from there. And so it's got the mix of tourism, but we're going all as pilgrims. And so I
mm,
do explain it in one sense like a tourist, but I also give the perspective like I did with you, like the morning satsangs, like what's the significance? How can we take some of this ancient wisdom and apply it to make it relevant in our life today? And I try to create a bridge from these places that we're going and the teachings and how they actually are still living today. And so
mm.
pilgrimage is sort of the funnest thing I do all year. I mean, I actually love the January trip, but because it's a training and I'm staying in one place, you get one part of my personality. But on pilgrimage, it's like everything is very, I mean, I make a rough outline of where we're going and what we're doing and who we're meeting, but I like to leave a lot unscripted and just sometimes when you script things too much, you cheat yourself out of the magic what can just manifest, you know? So what I do is I make a loose idea and then I just run into people or I meet people randomly or things spontaneously happen and it's just like a magical experience. And if people have, I mean, I've had people that come on pilgrimage with me like 3 times, 5 times, seven. The lady's been on pilgrimage with me like 7 times or 8 times because
They're always
it's a
different.
magical experience and it doesn't get old.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're similar in that way too. I mean, I have my trainings kind of like I have books for them and stuff, but like you have to have room for serendipity. That's how the universe works. You can't
Yeah.
script that stuff out. And if you are a spiritual person that's tapped in, that's doing sadhana, that is, chanting the thousand names of God, like there's magic that's going to happen. Who are we to kind of like script this out? Like, no, push away this like amazing magic that's trying to have like a unique
Exactly.
experience and like I'm gonna think that it's better in my head. Absolutely not. So I
Yeah.
very much resonate with that.
So I mean, some people they need some type of structure. So I lay it out. But I
A
like you got
little
to
bit.
understand everything is subject to change.
Yeah.
And yeah, why go against some divine agenda just because I have some puny idea of how to be a tour guide? That's silly.
I picture you with like a little safari hat and I just
And we do kirtan. And if you like kirtan, we do kirtan in all these places. And I tell you, to North India, it's like you are, it is so welcome and so loved when you go somewhere and do kirtan. It's just very powerful. Were you on the boat with us when we went to the,
I was. That's exactly what I was thinking of is when we're on the boat and everyone like you just saw people at first they were like, is
what
this
is going on?
yeah, what
And
is
then all of
going
a
on? But then
sudden
you
they're
saw
just
them.
like, oh, wow. They're so
Yeah.
excited when,
Yeah.
quote, foreigners come to their country and sing and speak about their heritage and their songs and their mantras. And they're so, what to speak of if you're, that was Mumbai. That was like, being in the midst of New York City. When you go into the holy cities and do it, they lose their mind. They just start following you around. They're like, I
I'm
want to
already
be.
starting to
I've had
plan.
people cry, you
Oh my
know.
gosh. Yeah, of course. I mean, I saw people crying when I was there and on the boat, but I'm thinking like, okay, I'm leading a retreat in Japan that ends the 23rd. I'll already be on that side of the world.
You're already be there. Oh, that's going to be great. Japan's
Yeah.
cool too, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I actually still live there and I speak some of the language and
Oh, you're kidding.
it's the same thing. You go there, you speak some language, they're like, oh my gosh, you're speaking our language. Like, thank you so much. Like,
Right.
there's all mine. Like, I'm an American coming in
I,
here. I don't own this place. Like,
I
that's
never
sometimes the
taught there,
mindset.
but I've done a bunch of shows there before. Um, and I think I'm going to go there in December for a couple of performances and a book signing.
No kidding.
But I would love to do it. Sounds great. And I will say Japan has got this, I think we talked about this. It's like an interesting blend of the old world. It's got this ancient Eastern vibe
Totally.
meets like 4 steps ahead in the future as well.
Yeah, I mean, their toilets are, I could, I won't go into detail, but like, there's so many buttons on there. I'm like, wow, this is luxury. This is great.
Yeah, I love Japan. That's so
Yeah.
cool that you're going.
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. So I'm curious, just sort of like combining worlds here. I want to know just like a little bit more about like you like kind of going back in time, like your martial arts career and maybe how you see that sort of like coming out as far as like for me, martial arts played such a huge role in my life. Like I'm a karate black belt. I'm a Shodan. I trained for like 8, 9 years to get that ranking. And then I was like a different person back then. I was angry. I was very disciplined. I was hardworking, all these things. But like I really needed yoga to kind of like soften me and give me a little
Sure.
bit, what do you call femininity? Because I was very much a tomboy and I was very rough and tumble, which as a woman, like growing up in a dojo, you kind of have to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's interesting because now I study Kalari Payattu, which is like the Bronze Age Indian martial art. And it's like it's come back into my life in a beautiful, like balanced way. So because we're so similar, I'm just curious about like that, like where it started, maybe how it served you, where it is now, just out of curiosities.
You know, it was at the time that I was just leaving the ashram, so I was 28 years old, and UFC 1 and 2 had just came out, And I just said, oh man, I've got to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but who teaches it in America? And then I ran into Harley from the Cro-Mags who had just started studying it. And he was wearing a gi, a kimono. And I was like, where are you going? He goes, oh, I studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he goes, I was like, you're kidding. I want to go. He's like, yeah, you're gonna love my teacher. So I went and I met his teacher,
Serendipity.
who back in the day was and he was one of the first guys that turned me on to Hari Krishna and Bhakti and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, and I met, it was Renzo Gracie, was world famous,
Yeah.
fighter. And so I started training there. And then I moved to California and then I started training with Jean-Jacques Machado. And he was from the original Gracie team as well. And
Yeah.
these were like these pioneers of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then, of course, Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan trained there as well. And that's how me and Joe Rogan became friends. And we just, we were sort of like, after a while, we were like I won't say the senior because Jean-Jacques had so many senior students, but we were sort of like above the new guys fighting. And so Eddie had a really unique style, which was akin to deep flexibility, which I was, and he was also my size. So I wanted to start studying no kimono or no gi fighting. And he, at that time, he just got his black belt for beating one of the best grapplers in the world, Hoyler Gracie. And so he opened his new school, 10th Planet. And 10th Planet wanted to become like a whole parallel grappling no gi system. And so I was there from the beginning of the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and Joe Rogan immediately went there as well as a bunch of other really phenomenal fighters. So I feel like I got on the ground floor of that in the old days. And I was already very, very physically, my body was open from doing Ashtanga yoga every day, which I had been doing for years. And so, yeah, that was my passion. And then, I would do boxing when I was there living in California. And then I do Muay Thai while I went to Thailand to do Muay Thai. But my real passion was, and I did MMA for a little while, but not in any events, just with once a week with all my friends.
Mm.
We just get into a ring and beat the hell out of each other. And but they
Sounds
were
like a
all they were all
Saturday
like
night to me.
they were all cultured grapplers too. So it was sort of like we were just combining all our skills, either Muay Thai or some guys were Krav Maga guys. But we were all sort of at the heart of it, grapplers.
Mm.
So anyway, it was just a great, if more than anything, it was a great joy because it was just a great time for like, especially at that time, it was very male oriented. It was like a lot of male bonding,
Yeah,
truthfully.
brotherhood.
It was a great brotherhood, and it was very almost meditational in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And you forget like how deadly your body is becoming and how deadly, because you almost do it almost like a chess game rather than like this is actually going to kill a man, or this is actually going to break a man's shoulder, or this man's
Right.
going to pop a person's elbow. But it's all that as well. But for
Right.
me, it was really more about camaraderie. It was about, physical stamina. It was about thinking 3 steps ahead. And yeah, and it was about being very, it was very like Eddie Bravo. I think he really came to fame because he was an artist, and he was like he is a great musician. And you can see that jujitsu had so much more room to evolve, as well as I'm sure all fighting sports do. If you're creative, you're not just following necessarily what's been passed down to you. You're
Right.
also taking it to some creative level and almost like coming up with things that were never done before, but using the basic principles in the same way Picasso was trained in classical art, but then he just started doing his own thing and coloring out of the lines, so to speak. And I feel like Eddie did that a lot with 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. And
Mm.
that was something I could really relate to also because I played a um, sort of an eclectic grappling game because it was at a time when a lot of jujitsu guys were just attacking the top part of the bodies, the arms, the shoulders, the chokes, and I was studying on my own like Russian sambo leg attacks and knee attacks and ankle heel hooks, and
Heel
that was
hook.
really not part of a Brazilian system yet. And so for me, it was
That's how
because,
this stuff evolves as
and that's
like,
how it evolves.
yeah.
You have hybrid systems, you know. But it helped me because I'm small and you know, and flexible, but not necessarily some huge buff guy. Um, it helped me sort of keep an edge, as well as like diet and lifestyle. Like my diet was also, I had a very rigid, you know, raw foods, like either 80 to 100% on raw plants and vegetables.
So
That was
nuts
it.
that that was your life for a while.
That was my life for about a year and a half of just
Wow.
fasting, juice fasting. And I tell you, I had ridiculously amount of like no body fat, like just, I was like 100 pounds. But my stamina was like, I could fast for like 21 days and just fight every day and do a stanga yoga every morning.
Well, you
Um,
have an incredible amount of Shakti. Like just watching you lead the retreat, I know that I only saw like a particular aspect of you, but that aspect was pretty impressive. I remember I was like, how you keep doing this, man? You're like, no, I crash. I like, let's just be clear, I crash. But like, it's interesting, like you said, a creative person, like we can find different forms of arts that, and we will influence them. You know, a leader style and person who has a lot of Shakti will influence because you make a ripple and then everybody is affected by it. And then it's like, then we take those experiences and they also funnel into who you are today as an artist and like the people that you're impacting. Like I said, the sort of Hare Krishna mosh pit that was happening. It's
right.
so interesting to me. Like there's I see like a ferocity of a martial artist and a hardcore singer, but like so much love and devotion of a bhakta, and it just makes like I said like a unique rasa, a unique flavor of,
Yeah.
and then you speak to people like me that I was like, oh, he's like so creative and he has all these different aspects, and there's other people like us, of course there is. So like it's really a beautiful manifestation of life experience and only the way that like we can do it, and like how rad is that? And just
I,
owning it.
yeah, you know, I think people tend to think like a spiritual person has to fit into this suit of clothes or has to fit into this type of box. And it's just not true. Even the history of India, like we were in this city, Jaipur, which was the city of a famous, very spiritual king. He was like a devotee, a Krishna devotee king from the 1600s who was 7.5 feet tall, like a powerful warrior. He took the throne when he was 13, and he was just like, and you know, you can't think of like, well, a spiritual person is going to be this like little nerdy guys walking around chanting on beads. And no, everybody's going to be what they are. Our bodies and our minds have been given to us from birth, for some particular reason, some particular karma. But what we do with them, you know, we can fight for if you're a warrior, you're going to fight for noble reasons, or you're going to be a thug. You know,
Mhm.
if you're an academic, you're going to study things to endorse your ego or to better the world and better society and better your spiritual life. You know,
Mhm.
if you're born very beautiful, you're going to use your beauty to manipulate men or women and make money, or just manipulate it for stroking your ego, or are you going to use your charisma to lift people higher? So
Mhm.
we all have some type of um, gift, and really, are we going to like upgrade ourselves with it, or are we going to degrade ourselves with it? And
Mhm.
so you and I are born into these like unique bodies, unique minds, where we're not going to fit into this like idea of a little yogi or a little hermit or a little, you know what we're both a little radical you know, and that's okay. Um, that's okay. It makes life a little bit interesting. And I
It
think the
really
fact
does.
that we both come from this like sort of slightly crazy background, it makes it definitely more interesting.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, and that's because like what when you're talking, I'm like resonating so much with this. You know, I feel like in the yoga world for a while, I did try to sort of fit that box. And just because like I didn't know any better. Everybody wants love and acceptance at some, on some level. And then
Yeah.
it just like it would never work for me. Like I was trying, like I studied, was just like a devoted Ashtangi for like 2 years, like almost 2 years. I kept it with the 6 days a week castor oil on the seventh day, and I was like completely
Yeah.
devoted to that. I knew that yoga was for me. I knew that I wouldn't leave that path, but it was just like I never fit into the box. And then, having the martial artists in me, like I was like, oh well, I'm a bit more spiritual or like softer than that. So it's like, did you have any moments in your life where it just kind of like it was hard to kind of stitch it together, or did it
Yeah,
like,
I
okay,
did.
thank you.
When
I'm
I
so
it's
happy that you answered
nah, I
that way. And
did
you're like,
when
no, it was just natural. It was fine.
no, it was when I first started getting very serious about I always did yoga since I was 17, but then when I was 28, when I started studying martial arts, I started studying Ashtanga yoga, which was a little bit more of a stronger physical practice, and it was very regulated, like you were saying, 6 days a week. And then I started teaching, and I felt like, you know what? And plus, I was teaching in Beverly Hills, of all places. I don't know how I ended up in Beverly Hills, but sure enough,
You
I
were
was
a
teach.
chef for a while too, not to divert too much, but
What's
you
that?
told me you were a chef.
I
Didn't
was
you?
a raw food chef.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just like a tiny little, very interesting. Like I didn't expect it, but I'm like, oh, of course he was. So sorry.
Well, because I made all these raw food preparations for myself, and then I started putting people on cleanses, and
Mm,
then the singer Cher, found out about me, so I used to cook for Cher.
that's so nuts.
I know it's so nuts, isn't it? When I
I'm
say
so
cook, I
sorry
mean
to
it was
interrupt.
raw food, so there was not cooking, but it was preparing.
Uncooking,
Right.
whatever.
But anyway, uh, so anyway, I was teaching in Beverly Hills. Somehow or other, a dirtbag punk from the Lower East Side ended up teaching yoga at these very exclusive mansions all over Beverly Hills and in Sports Club LA, Beverly Hills, in the early 2000s. And I just felt like, and I just went by my name Raghunath, which was, my guru given name. I never, mentioned my name was Ray Cappo. And so most of my clients they have no clue about my previous life. And at that time, I was sort of trying to like recreate myself. And I didn't want my, fame from the music scene to sort of like push me forward. I wanted to like completely recreate myself as a yoga teacher. And so I just never mentioned it. I never mentioned it. And every now and then, like, I remember one like older woman came up to me in a yoga class. She's like, I saw you on TV yesterday. That was you. You're a singer of a band, weren't you? And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, It was you. It
I
was
know it
you
was.
on TV. Your name's Ray Cappo. I saw you on some documentary about punk music in New York City. And you were like diving off the stage or something. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, and so I was like busted. And I was like realizing like, why am I hiding this part of my life? And every now and then worlds would collide. And it especially happened when I moved to New York City because people would come up to me after class and like, wait a second, I know who you are. Like I grew up listening to your music. It was
Mm.
different because Beverly Hills was a bunch of like, very well-to-do Beverly Hills people, Persian Jewish ladies. It was just like a whole different world. But when I went back to New York to teach, I'd always get a handful of people like, I know exactly who you are, man. You're Ray Cappo. And it was like then I started like worlds were colliding. And then I
Mm.
had to sort of like just sort of, okay, I'm just have to like, okay, I've got to like somehow merge these worlds together. And it just sort of and I realized like I shouldn't be ashamed of my past and I shouldn't try to like hide it in the closet. I should just, that's also part of what I am. So you're right. There was part of me wanted to see, can I just rebuild a whole new career where no one even knows who I am? So there was one thing about just like proving that to myself. But after a while, I realized like that was sort of a very cool facet of my life. And it's not like it was way off base. I talked about clean living, self-control, karma, although it was like a crazy punk band, I grew up reading, wisdom literature from traditions around the world. I started shelter when I was living in an ashram. So it wasn't like it was right out of left. It's not like I was in, Motley Crue or something, and I'm going to be like a yoga teacher. It's like I was in already a band that was into sense control and wisdom literature and studying the Vedas and chanting mantras and things like that and positive attitudes and clean living. So it wasn't such a massive bridge I had to create. I just had to tell my story. And that's why it was really satisfying to finish my book.
Yeah.
I think you know that my book came out from punk
Yeah,
to
Punk to
monk.
Monk. I read it. I have it. I wish I had the hard copy. Actually, I read it. And then it's exciting to know that you're working on another book.
Yeah, so that was good to tell that story, and it was, it wasn't my plan either. Too, I was trying to like do the same thing, like shove that to one side of my life, and just write a book on self-help using Vedic teachings to enhance your life.
Mm.
And the author was like, or the publisher was rather, he goes, "Well, that's a great idea, and we'll publish that book too, but we really need your life story. I think it's a good story." And I was like, I don't know, my life's not story's not that interesting. I was like. I have no like I wasn't beaten as a child. I wasn't a drug addict or in recovery. I wasn't on death row and escaped. It was like, I've lived a clean life my whole life. And the publisher was like, "Yeah, Raga, you got a pretty good story. I think you should just
Thank
tell your
you.
story." And I tried desperately to fight it, but they were like, "Just tell your story." And that's how the book happened. I just told my story.
Well, and it's through the stories, we had a lecturer at one of the yoga teacher trainings that I hosted that talked about truth versus storytelling, and his argument was that like truth can be demonstrated sometimes even more accurately. It's like the application of truth, the application of yogic tools, the application of all of these Vedic teachings that you've learned,
Yeah.
application in your life. And the thing
Yeah.
is, in life, it's messy. You're going to make mistakes. Like you're going to go swimming in the ocean and almost drown, and like
Yeah.
like the part of the story in your book,
Yeah.
and like have that moment, and where your ego just like is completely destroyed and you feel like reborn. But like the story behind it, if you just said, okay, this would happen, the story behind it actually illustrates the truth, I think, more beautifully than just writing the statements of it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, sure. Yeah, it was like that. It was very therapeutic too.
Yeah, yeah, it's very cathartic.
Mm,
So
exactly.
I wanted to ask another question about, and this will be just a little bit more intimate as far as emotional wise. So, like, I was reading something, and you had mentioned this in one of your kirtans or satsangs about how, like your father, upon the passing of your father, it sort of started this sort of spiritual pilgrimage. And his age, I think, was it 62 when he passed?
Yeah, it was like maybe 64 actually.
64, yeah. And you had mentioned that, like, something about like deepening your spiritual practice, because like that's kind of around the corner. And there's certain things in life that sort of like wake us up. Not that you're not already like devout and, like very much on the spiritual path, but I think that sometimes like our antenna goes up as far as like those little markers in life. So I guess like, how is that impacting you now? Because I see someone that like you are so filled with this beautiful mission. And I love what you said about having bridges of different, like you have pilgrimage, like level one and level two for people who
Mm,
like, that they need that experience, but they want some of the touristy stuff too. They need a little bit of padding.
sure.
So how is that sort of expressing in your life now?
Um, maybe I don't understand the question. Can you rephrase the question in like one sentence?
Yeah, the impact of your father's passing and perhaps the time frame where you're at in your life, is
Okay,
that something that is influencing your choices now or your spiritual path?
for sure. Um, Not that I'm gonna. First of all, I don't know if I'll make it to 64. Second of all, I might make it to 98. My mom's 98. But definitely on this side, north of 50, just south of 60, it's a different season of life, and you look at life differently. There's a lot of material options that no longer they're no longer available. You know, for example, when I'm 17, wouldn't be so cool to play Major League Baseball, or it was, that window's closed. I'm not gonna play
Hard
Major
stop.
League Baseball. Like desperate for anyone to enroll in, like the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army at this point in my life will not take me. You know what I mean? So it's one of these things, like opportunities close as you get into these seasons of life. And so it makes you think about the world differently. It just
Mm,
does. Youth is, we're intoxicated in youth by hopes, and hopes like I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. And sometimes life just goes by, and next thing you know, that window's closed. And you start to think about life as, oh wait, this has an end game. There's an end game here. It's not just like we're taking off, and the world is my oyster. I can do whatever I want. We realize like there's finite amount of time left. What do you want to really accomplish with this life? And when you really dial that in, it's so important because you don't want to waste a moment any longer. You realize these moments are valuable. There's no amount of money that can purchase these moments back.
mm,
These are all precious, and if you've neglected your body, time to get serious about that. If you neglected your meditation, time to get serious about that. If you neglected your psychological well-being, if you're filled with resentments or anger or hate, or you can't forgive people, it's time to like deal with that. And so if we want to have this progressive lifestyle or spiritual lifestyle, and you realize that the race is almost finished in this life, well, then it makes you sort of like realize I got to play some catch up. I got to play catch up right now. So it's actually a wonderful time of life when you're really
mm.
on a spiritual path. Um, Aging is no longer a diabolical monster. Aging becomes very beautiful, and becomes very graceful, and very it can be like incredibly exciting as well too, because now you have all this opportunity to dive into important things that were sort of perhaps even put on a back burner because I got time for that. I got time for that later. But
Yeah.
it makes you dial into these things that are actually very important.
I feel like you're very much illustrating that in your life. And I want to say it's an inspiration. Like this is my year of Saraswati, which is, my year of music and finding my voice and like doing my yogi punk rock band, which, makes even more sense that we're connecting in this way. So
Yeah,
so I really, I appreciate you for being you. And I know we're gonna wrap up in a moment. So I know that people can find you through your podcast, Wisdom of the Sages. They can look up your book, from punk to
punk
monk,
to monk, punk to monk.
and then back to punk.
Yeah,
And there's different retreats, and I can include the links in the show notes of the podcast. Um,
thanks.
yeah, so, and I'm very excited about this pilgrimage that you're going to be having when I'm on that side of the world. And
Oh yeah, so cool.
yeah, so I'm going to look up those dates. Um, well, it's been amazing having you here, Raghunath, and my time with you was really special, and you're an inspiration, and I'm super happy to connect with you, and I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Great, Erin. Keep up the good work. Podcast's a great idea, and hoping to visit your studio one day.
Yeah, oh, that's right. We're going to have to talk about that.
Yeah, let's stay connected.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, cool. Keep up the great work.
You too. Take care.
All right, bye.